friends. Welcome to another day, another lesson of godly play. For those of you who like spoilers, this is the parable of the Great Pearl. This looks familiar. I think I've seen this before. It looks like some kind of a treasure. It's because it's painted gold, right? I wonder what could be inside. I think I've heard other stories that have been wrapped in gold before, but I don't quite remember. Let's open it up and see what's in here. I think it's a parable. Let's see what's in here. Oh, it's a big white slice of pie. Or maybe it's like a big top of a flower. Have you ever seen a flower like that? Or maybe it's half of a moon. Yeah, that's what it could be. It looks very bright on this navy blue mat. Oh, it's covered in seeds. It looks like it might be a big snowy meadow. Whatever it is very white. But actually, look at the way the sun looks different over here versus over here. Where you see the shadows of our recording equipment, it looks almost purple. In some places it looks almost gray or blue, but in other parts it's undeniably white. Let's see what else is in here. Here's a brown squiggly. Maybe it's a fence? That's a good argument. Maybe like some hair. It's kind of nice. Maybe it's a swing. Maybe it goes kind of over here by you. Got twisted. Maybe it's supposed to be twisted, but I don't think so. It looks like a field. It looks like a fence in their snowy meadow. Let's see what else we got. Oh, we got another one. Here's a big arch becoming a sort of picture frame, framing our beautiful meadow. Oh, we're gonna make lots of picture frames, it looks like. We put this one over here. We are going to turn it. That's a big one. Good Lord, how many of these are we gonna get? That's a nice one. How many more do you think we can fit? Oh, well, this one's very small. That's pretty good. Wonder what else? Oh, maybe he can help us. Here's another guy. Maybe we'll put him there. Here's a table. I wonder what this is. Oh, it's a bed. And an office chair. this is a vessel for holding water that we're going to put right by his bed. I always like to have a glass of water by my bed. Here's a lamp and a tiny little vase to hold the oil for his lamp and light up his house. Here's a beautiful rug. Let's put his rug right there. And here is a whole bunch of money. He must be a very wealthy man. I wonder if there's anything else in here. Oh, there is. There's one more thing. Look. We have some cotton to cushion these things. They must be very valuable. Wonder if there's anything else. Nope. Well, I guess we have everything we need. There was once a man who said things that were so spectacular, so marvelous, that the rest of us couldn't quite figure it out. He spoke of a kingdom where the most important people were the people with the least power, where the most valuable people were the ones with the least amount of money. He spoke about how the weakest of us were actually the most powerful and the greatest of all. He spoke of this kingdom, and everybody wanted to know more, but they couldn't quite understand it. So one day, he said, "The kingdom of heaven is like this. It's like a kingdom in which a person who buys and sells fine pearls for a living, a merchant, goes in search of a great pearl. And when he finds it, he sells everything he has. So here's our merchant, and he's about to start a great journey. So he leaves his house, he goes out into the world, and he travels and he travels, and he comes to an establishment that has a pearl, and he takes it and he looks at it, he admires it, and he says, "Oh, this is a fine pearl. It's quite big, it rolls nicely, it catches the light, but I see that it is not quite perfect. It is not quite great." And so he puts the pearl back and he continues his journey. And he goes through valleys, and he crosses rivers, and he squeezes through little canyons. And he comes to another place. And he looks at another pearl, an even bigger pearl. He says, "This might be the biggest pearl I've ever seen." But it's not quite right. See how the sun doesn't catch in all the corners? See how some of it is wibbly? And it makes me feel like less of a person when I hold it. So he again sets down this beautiful pearl, and he continues his journey, looking, seeking the great pearl. In some places he goes, he finds that there's no pearls at all, and he has to keep walking. And he goes, he crosses the ocean, and he goes to a new place. And here, at the last place he visits, he meets a man who sells pearls. And the merchant looks at this pearl and he gasps and he says, "Oh my goodness, this pearl is perfect. It's absolutely round. It it looks exactly the way all pearls dream of looking. It makes me feel light and happy. It makes me feel complete. So he asks the seller, "Are you willing to part with your pearl? How much would it be?" And the seller says, "I am unwilling. This pearl is too perfect." But the merchant says, "I must have it. It brings me joy." And the seller says, "Well, what have you got?" And so the merchant leaves immediately. And he runs home over the oceans, under the seas. And he returns to his home. And he looks around and he says, "Here, I'll take him my oil and my lamp, because nothing is more valuable than light." So he takes it back and he journeys and he says, "Here, have my lamp and have my oil." And the seller says, "But I have no need of this lamp. I go to bed when the sun goes to bed, and I don't need oil or a lamp." He says, but I will keep it. What else have you got?" So the merchant goes back home and he grabs his chair. And it's covered in purple cloth, and he thinks this might really impress the seller. So he goes, and the seller looks at the chair and says, "Ah, it is a fine chair. It looks modern even, but I need something else to part with my fair pearl." And so the merchant runs back, and he runs to his home, and he looks around, and he says, "Ah, my beautiful rug, my perfect woven rug. I'm taking it back to the seller." And the seller looks at the rug and says, "I do have need of a rug, but this could never be enough for that pearl." And so the merchant goes back home, and this time he goes a little bit of another way. And he looks around, and he's running out of things now, but he says, "Nothing's more important than water." So he grabs his water jug, and he journeys, but there's a flood, so he's got to go the long way. And he goes back through the valleys, and around, and he comes back to the seller's house carrying this jug of water and says, "Here, water is life. Do you want this jug?" And the seller says, "It is indeed life, but there was a flood and I have too much water as it is." Oh, and the merchant is disheartened, and he thinks, "Okay." So he runs back home, and he looks around, and he says, "Okay, my fortune, all the money I've ever made, I will take with me, and I will give it to the seller in exchange for this pearl." And he takes it, and he puts the money on the table in front of the seller, and he says, "Here, this is everything, every coin I have ever earned. This is everything I have." And the seller says, "Really? You have nothing else?" And the merchant says, "Well, there is one more thing." And so he walks home. But he's taking his time now, because he knows that if he brings the last thing that he owns, which is his bed, he really will have nothing left, because he will have given everything he has. And so he drags the bed. He drags it over miles and miles to give to the seller of the pearl. And he puts the bed in the seller's home, and the seller says, "Ah, finally, this is adequate. You may take my pearl." And the merchant grabs it, and he skips home. He's so elated. Everywhere he goes, he shares the beauty of the pearl with the people, and he skips and he journeys and he goes back to his homeland, and he sets his pearl in his house, and he is content. Now I wonder what could have possibly made that pearl worth giving up everything. I wonder if the merchant was happy with his decision. I wonder if this filled his life with meaning, the way he hoped it would. I wonder if the pearl was really a pearl, or what else it might have been. I wonder if the seller was happy with all of his new stuff. What was he going to do with it? It almost doesn't fit in his house. I wonder what his name was. I wonder what the merchant's name was. I wonder if these two people were even alike, or if they were brothers. I wonder if you've ever seen anything that precious. I wonder if you'd be willing to give everything else up for it. I wonder if this whole place, this whole story, could happen anywhere else. Where could it be? I wonder what this pearl could really be. I find it hard to imagine a jewel, a pearl, being worth giving up everything in my life. I wonder if it was something else entirely. I wonder if you've ever come across something that was so valuable that you'd give up everything you have for that one thing. I wonder if we might be the merchant. Or maybe, I wonder if Jesus is calling us to be like the one who would give up everything they have in order to hold the most valuable treasure. I wonder. So here we have our little box that all of the pearls go in. The big one, the medium, almost perfect one, and then the great pearl. Here are all of the seller's new treasures. His new beautiful rug, his water jug, his lamp and the oil, all the money, the beautiful purple chair, and the table that he had from forever. And here is our seller, and here is our merchant. And here are all of the places the merchant traveled to find the pearl of great value. Here's the merchant's home. And last but not least, here is our big white meadow, the place to tell our story. And that is the end. We'll see you next time. Bye.